Good morning, family. Um, I enjoyed seeing the awards given out this morning. If you guys weren't here for LTC, they put a lot of work into that stuff. The kids spent many weeks getting ready for that, um, and I know Brad made a lot of sacrifices in his own personal life to make sure that happened. So, um, make sure we're telling him how much we appreciate all he does for our congregation. Um, so today I want to talk about the importance of mothers because it's Mother's Day and that's expected of me, and I'm okay with expectation, trying to be at least, right? Unfortunately, Dave took the easy way with his table talk. So thankfully, he told me about that ahead of time. Otherwise, we would have had very similar lessons. I actually want to talk about a story in the Bible concerning Mary and Jesus that we might not initially ascribe to a Mother's Day lesson. And that's found in John chapter 2. Ironically, Jay had mentioned this scripture when we talked about me preaching a Mother's Day sermon. I don't know if he meant it to be like a joke or not, but as it turns out, it's a great verse passage to use. So in John chapter 2, right, that's the story of the wedding in Cana. Just so you guys know where we're at in our storyline here. He's at the wedding in Cana. The host runs out of wine, which, if you've ever been to a wedding, is grounds for execution, pretty much. Interestingly enough, Mary goes to Jesus. She says, hey, they're out of wine. Jesus' response to this, what do you want me to do about it? He basically said, like, this isn't my problem. This isn't my time yet. It's not my time to reveal myself to these people yet. What do you want me to do? Mary's response is to then go to the servants and says, do whatever he tells you to. We often talk about this story as, the first miracle of Jesus, and we talk about like this is his comeuppance when we start to see all of the wondrous signs, and we talk about the implications that Jesus that is being made by Jesus making this wine and all of these things. What we don't often talk about, though, is what kind of relationship must have existed between Mary and Jesus for her to respond in the way she did. I always struggle talking about Jesus' parents because it's hard to imagine Jesus being a kid. Especially since the only real kid I ever had a lot of experience with was myself, and I can tell you definitively that Jesus did not look like I did when I was a kid. Right? But at some point, he was a kid, and there's this nurturing process that takes place even in Jesus' life. We sometimes make the mistake, I think, of believing that Jesus just didn't really need anything. Like he came out of the womb with all knowledge and all wisdom and all of this stuff. But I would submit to you that he needed a mother. It's not like God required a woman in order to make a man. He already proved he could do without one once before, didn't he? So at some point, it must have been important that Jesus had a mother. We can go the easy route and say, well, it was to fulfill prophecy. You'd be right, technically, but who gave that prophecy? So if he wanted it to be different, wouldn't it be different? So God must have decided that it would be important for Jesus to have a mother. In order for Mary to go up and give a vague statement of issue, right? Jesus, they're out of wine. She must have believed he could do something about it, first and foremost, right? That he would have the answer to the problem. It takes a lot of faith. I don't know how many of you have even experienced that kind of faith from another person. Where they'll come and just bring you a problem knowing that you're just beyond any doubt. Of course he's got the answer. I can tell you that there's not a lot of people in my life that have shown that to me. There are certain areas of expertise that they'll come to me on, but usually it's specific questions. Very rarely has anyone ever said, hey, Nathan, I have this problem, and then just relax, knowing beyond any doubt that I was going to make it right. In fact, I only have one person in my life that has ever shown me that, and that's Eden. When she brings me some busted up toy and says, here, Daddy, fix it, lays it down, and then just proceeds to walk in the other room and pick a different toy to play with. Because it's inconceivable in her mind that I'm just not going to fix it. You see that's built. Eden has that faith in me, that expectation of me, because I've allowed her to have that. Because when she brings me broken toys, I fix them. I've always fixed them for her. When I can't fix them, I replace them. Because I want her to have that faith in me. It tells me that Mary has had times before where she had to trust Jesus to just fix the problem. This can't have been the first time. And then he submits kind of a passive argument, right? He says, what do you want me to do about it? This isn't my time. Basically saying, like, you shouldn't be asking this of me. And as typical mother, she doesn't even bother to respond to him, does she? She just goes to everyone else, just do whatever he tells you to. And she just has full confidence that he's going to come around to her way of thinking. And he does. Which should also tell you something about the relationship between Mary and Jesus. It must be hard maintaining a respect or a position of respected authority with the Son of God. Jesus said, it's not my time, because this wasn't really a prescribed miracle. There's no prophecy that said this was going to happen. I don't believe Jesus lies, which means Jesus changed his plans to accommodate the wishes of his mother. The divine plan was adjusted to accommodate a woman's wishes for wine. I hope that resonates with you the way it does to me, because I don't often think of people's wishes as that important, if I'm being honest. Most of the time, people are like, I'd rather you do this. If it's convenient, maybe. Or if I could see that there's a valid reason why it would be a bad thing if I didn't do it, then yeah, I'll make an effort. But am I really going to go out of my way and change a big plan in order to accommodate some small wish of yours? Probably not. But Jesus changed his plan for revealing his power to the world because his mom didn't want the wedding to run out of wine. That's a pretty small wish. Realistically, that's a fairly small thing, in all honesty. I'm not sure if people would have talked about it. It would have been this horrible thing. We ran out of wine after hour one, and we had to drink water like plebeians. But in all honesty, I think back to my wedding. I don't even remember what we ate unless I actually sit down and think about it. Usually, then I have to ask my wife. So, in the grand scheme of things, would it have been that sad if they ran out of wine? Not really. But Jesus knew that. In the grand scheme of things, whether they have wine or not really doesn't matter that much. What it tells us is how important his mother is. He's going to go out of his way, he's going to change his plan, a very large plan, encompassing the entirety of creation and the salvation of said creation. And he's going to begin it before he was originally going to. All because he wanted his mother happy. Apostle Paul in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, he talks about God's love through the lens of a mother's love. We always look at God he's described as the Father, right? So he's masculine. We usually attribute our dads to the character of God. But interestingly enough, there are more instances where the Bible compares God's love to a mother's love than it does a father's love. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7 and 8 says, we were gentle among you, like a mother caring for her little children. We loved you so much that we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. We know that sharing the gospel is something we're supposed to do. If you don't know that, you should have been here last week. Or the week before, because it's kind of a big deal for us, right? Sharing the gospel. But what he's saying is we shared with you the most important thing in our lives. And then we also shared our life. That's a pretty deep love. He doesn't compare that to a father's love for his son. Well, I don't think a father's love is less than, but it doesn't quite give the same imagery, does it? I'm going to be honest, it's something that's always humbled me over the last 2 years of parenting is how infrequently I measure up to the rest of my household. I could oftentimes err on the side of pride, which is not exactly the greatest thing for me. So it should say something when I tell you I readily acknowledge that I am not the gold standard. Yeah, think about like cooking, right? Most of you guys know at this point, I enjoy cooking. I enjoy making meals. I don't really sacrifice for the sake of making a meal. Like if I'm going to make dinner, it's because I'm in the mood to make dinner, right? And if I'm not in the mood to make dinner, there's something in the fridge that's left over heated up, right? Like my wife is polar opposite. She rarely ever gets in a mood where she just really wants to make some food. But man, she can work just as many hours, just as hard as I can, and come home and somehow bring herself to put together a full meal on the table. I'm not doing it, guys. Like, if I'm not in the mood to cook, we heat up some mac and cheese. I don't really care. The point is that it looks different. And for me, the way she approaches basic household operations is so selfless compared to when I do those things. Right? Because when I volunteer to do the laundry at my house, it's not out of selflessness. If I'm being honest, it's because I don't want you asking me to do laundry at a time that is inopportune for me, so I just rather do it on my own time. Because if you ask me, you're going to do it when it's inconvenient. You see, doing laundry is actually a selfish thing. When I make food, it's because I want a certain food. I appreciate that it takes that chore off of Bailey's hand, but in all reality, I'm doing it because I want to eat that thing. Right? I don't smoke ribs for my wife's sake because she doesn't even care that much for them. I do it because I like ribs. I love my family. I give a lot for them whenever it's asked of me. There are a few things I wouldn't do for those two girls. But it doesn't quite look the way Bailey does. Right? Because for somehow the love mothers have for children, it isn't these special circumstances. Right? Like for guys, we often can point at certain situations like, yeah, he made a sacrifice for his kids in this way. Right? And we're looking at specific events. For mothers, honestly, I can't pinpoint one. If I were to tell you something Bailey has sacrificed on behalf of the rest of us, her life just kind of looks like sacrifice to me. The amount of times she does things I know full well she doesn't want to do. The times that she puts eating to bed because I'm frustrated that day and I don't think I can do bedtime. Knowing full well that it only takes me 10 minutes and she's going to be up with this girl for 2 hours. But she'll do that if I ask her. For me, sacrificing for my family becomes these abnormal events, right? These out of the ordinary instances where it is necessary for me to step up even more. But for mothers, that's just kind of their life. It's really quite humbling to think about. You know, guys a lot of us tend to be pretty primed from an early age that in order for you to really affect us with your words, we got to have a decent bit of respect for you. Right? Like if some random person came off the street and said, hey, you're being a terrible parent. All right. That's not going to affect me at all. In fact, I'm probably not even going to remember it after 5 minutes because I just do not care how you feel concerning my abilities as a parent. Right? But women tend to not be like men, and thank God for that, right? You know, everyone gives you advice, especially when you're a newer parent. You know, first-time parent, it's only been 2 years. Everybody has advice. Everybody thinks that you got to be doing something differently than what you're doing now. Because all of your kids turned out perfect, right? So I probably shouldn't be taking jabs at people from up here, but couldn't help it. That stuff really affects mothers a lot more. It tends to have a real lasting impact when you tell a woman that she's not measuring up as a parent. You tell me I'm not measuring up as a father, and the first thing I'm going to say is, who are you? See, sacrifice from mothers takes a lot of different forms. There's a lot of emotional sacrifices that mothers make constantly. We were gentle among you, like a mother caring for her little children. I'm pretty heavy-handed, right? Like I got like my process for behavioral correction. There's about 3 steps. And at step 3, my hand is meeting your backside. Bailey has like 50 of these things. And it takes a toll on her. It takes a toll on anyone who's trying to teach a child how to behave, right? It wears on you after a while. You see, for me, I again am humbled when I look at the example she provides to our family, because I don't have that longevity that she does. Now, Thursdays I stay at home with Eden. I have all day with Eden. By the time 5 o'clock rolls around, I'm single parented out, right? Like I'm checking the window just as eagerly as Eden, waiting for Bailey to get home, right? Because I'm checked out. I've given everything I've had to give all the way to 5 o'clock. After that, I'm like, all right, I need somebody to come relieve this, right? My shift needs to be over. Psalms 139, verse 13 starts out, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." And think about this psalmist is really showing us how much God works with mothers for the sake of creating life. It really kind of makes me feel lazy, because my part in that whole situation is pretty limited. God knits your children together inside your womb. This intricate, intimate part of their being bound together into a creature in his own image. I think parenting, I know for me, being a father is one of the greatest blessings God ever saw for me. It is my absolute favorite title I have in life. But there are times when I see, especially when I see Bailey interacting with me at a level that I just haven't been able to get to. Or when she's dealing with her on a particularly bad day, which I get, I'm spoiled. Like, bad days with Eden is a good day for a lot of children. And just the amount of patience that she has to make me wonder if I'm really the spiritual leader of our family sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, I got the words. I make the lessons, tell you all the right answers. But in all reality, there's a lot of ways Bailey's a better example than I am. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that God has such an intimate part to play when a woman becomes a mother. Exodus chapter 20, verse 12 says, "Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land of so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you." Right? It's one of those few commandments that come with a promise, as we read in other passages. This is a difficult commandment to look at for me. It's repeated in the New Testament, right? Even though it's part of the 10 Commandments, we know that it still applies to us because Jesus went and said, hey, you still got to do this, right? It's difficult because I don't really know what that looks like for somebody to have a relationship with his parents. It's difficult for me. I grew up in a way that led me to being the kind of person that if you're bad for me, right, or if I feel like you're going to inconvenience my life overly much, if I don't see any benefit in you being present in my life, you're just not going to be present in my life. Yeah, to me, there's not a hatred there. It's just if I don't have a reason for you to be here, I'm just not going to have you here, right? I've learned a lot about what honoring people looks like from witnessing Bailey's interaction with her parents. I make mistakes like everybody does. And there are times when they make mistakes that for somebody as limited in capacity as I am, I'd have been like, I'm done with you. It doesn't take much to get me there, to be fair to them. But she has a lot of patience with them, right? Through all the mistakes, she still goes and visits, she still calls them, she still gives preference to them, listens to their advice, respects them. I've learned a lot about what practical Christianity looks like from watching somebody that doesn't even know that she's showing. And I think that this honoring our mothers goes back into the story we looked at in John chapter 2. Why did Jesus change his plans for his ministry, change the entire beginning step of it? Because his mother asked him. You know, Wednesday night, there was a group of, what was there, Dave? 5 of us. It was probably here till like 10 o'clock, a little bit later than 10 o'clock. We stuck around, had words because, you know, all of you women had already gone home and weren't there to yell at us. But it was interesting when, you know, parenting and parenting styles got brought up and you know, somebody, I don't remember who said it, but somebody had made that whole quip, you know, because I said so. And I kind of discussed how, like, I actively tried to avoid using it as a parent. Like, to me, that's like a silver bullet, and you don't want to, like, use it and then not have it. But, you know, prepping this study has kind of caused me to think that there might be a little bit more validity to that statement than I initially gave it credit for. You see, to me, whenever somebody said, because I said so, that was really just you admitting that you didn't have a good reason and you just weren't willing to say it. You know, it's possible. I'm saying it's possible, not that it's true in every regard, but it's possible that there are times because I said so means to be sufficient. That you shouldn't have to have any more reason. There's a thought that occurred to me, not one I have properly fleshed out because we're in a wheelhouse outside of my experiential knowledge. Proverbs 6:20 and 23. This is my last verse for you guys tonight. This is, my son, keep your father's command and do not forsake your mother's teaching. Bind them always on your heart. Fasten them around your neck. When you walk, they will guide you. When you sleep, they will watch over you. When you wake, they will speak to you. For this command is a lamp, this teaching is a light, and correction and instructions are the way to life. This passage reminds us the importance of having parents correcting our behavior. That at no point do we have any business regarding them in resentment for that role. But the reason that this passage stuck out to me, because I had a whole list of verses that talked about mothers, and then I went through and basically made a sermon from that, right? And the reason this passage stuck out to me is because it closely resembles the language in another passage, right? In Deuteronomy, we have what I've referred to it before as the Shema, right? That the greatest command, and it's found before the 10 Commandments are even given. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one God, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your mind, and all your strength. The reason that it reminds me of that is because of what comes after. As you carve this into stone, The stone, it says you carve it upon your hearts. It says you talk about it when you go to bed. You talk about it when you rise up. You talk about it as you go and as you come. You talk about it when you eat. You talk about it when you're sitting around and sharing company. That Shema follows up the idea that God is one God and that we are to love him with everything we are, with the importance of making it the main topic of our lives. And we go to this passage in Proverbs, and it really kind of tells us that the teachings our parents give us share a similar importance in our lives. I lived with Beth and Richard for a year and a half, and if anyone has talked to me for any length of time, you know that if I consider anyone my parents, right? Beth got a Mother's Day card from me. That's it. That is the only person in my life that I go and give a Mother's Day card to. Anyone else, you're actually probably getting it from me. I only lived with them for a year and a half. I've probably forgotten more things than I remember about things they told me during that year. But I can tell you that the fundamentals, right? Because when I moved in with them, I was in this process of figuring out what kind of person I needed to be. I was in this unique position that most of you guys never get to experience, where I am in a place where I get to recreate myself from the ground up. Right? Because there's no one that knows me from before to judge me or hold me to a standard. I get to completely decide everything about my character starting out. They were very intricate, very important part of that process for me. When I first moved in, I talked to them once about how much I struggled with being a new member at the church, with the background that I had, and not actually knowing anyone at that church. And I was really struggling with a lot of self-doubt, worried that people were looking at me for the wrong reasons, or seeing me in the wrong image and things like that. Richard's, if any of you know him, he can be kind of a hard man at times. He doesn't have time to really make you feel good about accepting what he says sometimes. He told me, Nathan, if you're going to concern yourself that much with how people view you, why have you not asked any of them how they view you? Seems like a pretty silly thing to have stuck in my memory, as hard as this one is, but it actually formulated that question, and I don't even know that he remembered asking me that question, even in that situation. But that question actually formulated a mindset that I've carried on for the last 7 years. And I tell people the lesson I learned from that question all the time. If you're not willing to solve the problem, stop telling me the problem. Stop complaining about it. All right? You want to complain about a problem? That's cool. If you don't want to do anything about the problem, it's not a problem. And I got that from what he asked, because that's essentially what I was doing. I developed in my own mind this massive problem with church. It wasn't even there. Beth did a lot of the same stuff with me. I remember more day-to-day, moment-by-moment conversations that I had with those two people than I do about any conversation I've had with anybody else in my life. I lived with a family for 9 years. One of the people in that family I still refer to as my grandfather. You guys hear me talk about him all the time. I still don't remember nearly as much about the things that man taught me as I do Beth and Richard. See, I don't share biology with them, but that role is special. When you take on the role of a mother or father for something, that is a very special, unique place to be in somebody's life. We can be really hard on them at times. We can be really hard on the people we consider our parents or who are our parents. We judge them harshly for mistakes that they made, or they didn't handle situations the way we think we would handle that situation. Mom got tired too quickly. Dad was always yelling. We can oftentimes judge people, especially people in those roles, so harshly for perceived failure. Hopefully what you've seen in the passages I've shared with you this morning is that mothers and fathers share a very unique relationship with God. You know that Matthew chapter 28, it tells us that you're not to call any man father, for you have one Father, and that's the Father. You think about this. We really think about this. That means that there are only two people that are allowed to be called something that entail that distinct relationship. That's my dad, and it's God. Mothers, you have that same unique connection. There is an understanding that you get from God or about God that is wholly unique to parents. And so to those of you who have maybe a bad taste in your mouth when you talk about your parents, struggle with that concept of honoring them, just maybe feel like maybe they're not as smart as they think they are. Newsflash, neither are you, right? I want you to really consider that. God specifically designates your parents. Right? This isn't a happenstance of genetics. He specifically decides what parents get which kids, and you can decide for yourself if we're talking about reward or punishment there. But my point is, if as a child I recognize that about my parents, what does that mean about my responsibility for how I view their decisions? It's a lot harder to be prideful about it. It's a lot harder to not be gracious or patient with them, especially when you think about all the times they were patient with you. Right? I put a conversation I had with somebody while I was developing this sermon. Brought up, he told me he didn't understand what I meant by this. I said, all right, I'll liken it to this. There's a good chance your parents will get to a certain age where you're going to have to do certain things for them you really don't want to do. Right? I look at my buddy whose mother-in-law, her mother recently passed last year. She had late-stage dementia. Every person in that family had experienced carrying this woman to the bathroom and taking care of her. The youngest person in that family is 15 years old. Not a super comfortable place to be. I would personally probably struggle with that. If Beth called me up and said, Nathan, I need you to come and help me go to the bathroom. That would probably be an uncomfortable conversation. But most of you have parents that you've had since you were born. It's a lot easier to say yes to that need when you remember all the diapers they changed. What I'm saying is, if you think about the things that you judge your parents harshly for, that they did this wrong, put them in line of all the things you did wrong, and they still put up with you. It's a unique concept. So unique, in fact, that the only person we really see that kind of response from is God himself. Over and over and over, we fall short of the example we're given, of the commands that we're left with. Over and over and over, I fall short of having the purity in the relationships with those around me that the gospel commands me. Over and over and over, I give myself excuses why I don't have to do things the way Christ would have done this. And for 10 years now, I've witnessed God forgiving me, blessing me with more opportunities, challenging me even harder. See, when life happens, bad stuff happens. There are times of grief and distress and things like that. It's a lot easier for me to be patient and not lay that at God's feet. And say, well, you didn't do this the way I think you ought to have done. Right? You didn't heal this person like I thought you should have done. You didn't fix this problem. But that person that was mean to me is still breathing. Right? I don't think you should have. I don't know why you didn't fix that when I prayed about it. How many times are we told to be a certain way, to act a certain way, to do certain things by the Word of God? How many times have we failed at that? How quick we are to be impatient with parental figures that we've been blessed with. The end all be all. Your mother put up with your sins almost as patiently as God Himself. Make sure you're giving her credit for that. This morning we want to make an offer for anyone here that you don't go away from any meeting we have feeling like you were not fulfilled. So we always make an offer anytime we gather together for those who have need of prayer. If you wish to make known to the body of believers some request that's on your mind, some struggle that's on your heart, we want you to tell us about it. Allow us to engage in that spiritual battle with you. Bless us with permission to come into that spiritual battle. We urge you that if you have not re-entered a relationship, a parent-son, parent-daughter relationship with God, that you make that right today. Don't leave service this morning an orphan. It's an open adoption. Anyone who wants it can have it. We urge you today, if you haven't yet, accept Jesus Christ. Put your faith in the knowledge that He was, in fact, the Son of God made flesh. Accept what He says to us concerning our relationship to the Father. Take on the challenge of modeling your life after His example. Join Him in His death, burial, and resurrection, so you may live with the hope of joining Him in His ascension. We invite you to come forward if you have not yet experienced that resurrection through the waters of baptism. Whatever your needs are this morning, please come forward and make them known as we stand.